Jinnah of Pakistan by Stanley Walpert. Chapter 19, Bombay to London, 1946. If there is not sufficient power, create that power. Jinnah charged his League Council in Bombay in late July. All efforts of the Muslim League at fair play, justice, even supplication and prayers have had no response of any kind from the Congress. The cabinet mission have played into the hands of the Congress. It has played a game of its own. In 1920, he had lost faith in Congress. Then, more than a quarter century later, he abandoned hope and trust in the British, whose post-war problems and pressures obliged them to play into the Congress's hand. Throughout these negotiations, the cabinet mission and the viceroy were under terror and threats of the Congress. Jinnah told his 450 followers, who were packed into a sweltering hall, crowded with members of the press, both foreign and domestic, as well as delegates from every province. The cabinet delegation and the viceroy have gone back on their plighted word and abandoned what was announced as their final proposals. Congress really never accepted the long-term plan. Its conditional acceptance was communicated to the cabinet mission by the Congress president on June 25th. The cabinet mission, like a drowning man ready to catch hold of a straw, treated this conditional acceptance as genuine. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, as the elected president, at a press conference in Bombay on July 10th, made the policy and attitude of the Congress towards the long-term proposal clear, that the Congress was committed to nothing. What is the use of imagining things and dreaming? Jinnah convened his council to re-examine the whole position in the light of broken British pledges and of Congress's defiance of the League and rejection of the mission's plan. I can tell you this without fear of contradiction, that of the three parties throughout the negotiation, the Muslim League behaved as an honorable organization. Jinnah assured his backers, "We worked with clean hands. The Muslim League is the only party that has emerged from these negotiations with honor and clean hands." Clean hands had always been a prime virtue to him, and they seemed then to symbolize a political surgeon's final preparation before entering the operating room, where the hopelessly sick patient lay waiting to be cut. Nothing short of radical surgery would suffice. When even the great British mission went back on its words, cowed down and paralyzed before a Congress which had neither decency nor any sense of honor and courage. All these facts proved clearly beyond a shadow of a doubt, Quaid-e-Azam continued, that the only solution of India's problem is Pakistan. So as long as the Congress and Mr. Gandhi maintain that they represent the whole India, so long as they deny true facts and the absolute truth that the Muslim League is the only authoritative organization of the Muslims, and so long as they continue in this vicious cycle, there can and will be no compromise or freedom. Mr. Gandhi now speaks as a universal advisor. He says that the Congress is the trustee for the people of India. We have enough experience of one trustee that has been here for 150 years. We do not want the Congress to become our trustee. We have now grown up. The only trustee of the Muslims is the Muslim nation. Jinnah now accused Cripps of trying to wriggle out of simple definitions in his common talk about the mission, resorting to jugglery of words and misleading the House, and adding in what was for Jinnah was perhaps the deepest cut of all. I am sorry to say that Sir Stafford Cripps debased his legal talents. To Pethick Lawrence, who had informed London's House of Lords that he, Jinnah, could not have a monopoly of Muslim nomination, Jinnah shouted, "I am not a trader. I am not asking for concessions for oil, nor am I higgling and haggling like a banya." His fierce rejection of the business of his fathers and their commercial community underscores how betrayed he felt in the aftermath of the negotiations that ended the mission. to orthodox fellow Muslims for whom commerce, trade, and interest were almost as execrable as pork and wine. He had proudly professed himself as antipathetic to higgling banyas as the strictest Sunni mullah. The bridge of faith in the British common law that had hitherto linked him to Cripps, Pethick Lawrence, Ramsay MacDonald, Morley, and Gladstone was shattered, swept away by torrents of self-interest that gushed from Simla's Himalayan heights, dissolving like his trust in all of them in a flood of frustrated despair. Next day, the Muslim League Council met to consider over a dozen resolutions that had been tabled by members, trying to decide what steps the League should take in view of the cabinet mission having gone back on their word, as Jinnah told them. Liaquat Ali read each of the resolutions loud, and then general discussion began, lasting 2 whole days. The best for us is frankly to admit that we made a mistake in accepting a union of some sort proposed in the scheme and go back to our Pakistan ideal, urged Sir Feroz Khan Noon. The path of wisdom lies in the total rejection of the constitutional proposals. Let there be one guiding beacon before us, a fully sovereign, separate state of Pakistan. Maulana Hasrat Mohani rose to shout amidst wild cheering. If the Qaid-e-Azam will only give his word, the Muslims of India will rise in revolt at a moment's notice. Other Maulanas, Khans, and Mullahs reiterated those chants, and Raja Ghazanfar Ali promised that if Mr. Jinnah gave the call, Muslims from all walks of life would come forward to carry on struggle for the attainment of Pakistan. On July 29, 1946, Jinnah and his working committee presented 2 resolutions hammered out after hearing the council's opinion. The first withdrew League's acceptance of the cabinet mission's May proposals. The second charted the League's course of future direct action. Whereas Muslim India has exhausted, without success, all efforts to find a peaceful solution to the Indian problem by compromise and constitutional means, and whereas the Congress is bent upon setting up caste Hindu Raj in India with the connivance of the British, and whereas recent events have shown that power politics and not justice and fair play are the deciding factors in Indian affairs, and whereas it has become abundantly clear that the Muslims of India would not rest contented with anything less than the immediate establishment of an independent and fully sovereign state of Pakistan, the time has come for the Muslim nation to resort to direct action to achieve Pakistan, to assert their just rights, to vindicate their honor, and to get rid of the present British slavery and the contemplated future caste Hindu domination. After both resolutions were enthusiastically adopted, Jinnah concluded, "We have taken a most historic decision. Never before in the whole life history of the Muslim League did we do anything except by constitutional methods and constitutional talks. We are today forced into this position by a move in which both the Congress and Britain have participated. We have been attacked on 2 fronts. Today, we have said goodbye to the constitutions and constitutional methods. Throughout the painful negotiations, the 2 parties with whom we bargained held a pistol at us, one with power and machine guns behind it, and the other with non-cooperation and the threat to launch mass civil disobedience. This situation must be met. We also have a pistol." Pethick Lawrence urged Wavell to meet Jinnah as soon as possible, to press him even now to permit members of the Muslim League to join an interim coalition government with Congress. Wavell underestimated Jinnah's anger and the imminence of violent League action. He wired home on August 1st that there was no indication of any immediate attempt at a mass movement, and asked Pethick Lawrence to inform the cabinet that it would not be advisable to send for Jinnah immediately. "If I send for Jinnah at once, it will be regarded as a panicky reaction to a threat, will put up Jinnah's stock. I should propose to leave Jinnah alone. So the game continued. Move by Machiavellian move. After the League Council met, a correspondent for the Daily Telegraph interviewed Jinnah to ask what he meant by direct action. And Jinnah at first replied that there would be a mass illegal movement, but when the correspondent showed him the text of his article before cabling it home, Jinnah changed illegal to unconstitutional. Jinnah's secretary reported that the working committee set the date for a universal Muslim Hartal for Friday, August 16, 1946. The Viceroy's deputy private secretary felt a strike had possibilities of working up mass hysteria. Yet Wavell remained unperturbed, mistakenly believing that Jinnah has no real idea what to do. On August 6, 1946, with Pethick Lawrence's approval, Wavell wrote Nehru as President of the Congress, inviting him to submit to me proposals for the formation of an interim government. It will be for you to consider whether you should first discuss them with Mr. Jinnah. I am sure you agree with me that a coalition government can best direct effectively the destinies of India at this critical time. Time is short. Nehru replied from Gandhi's ashram at Wardha on August 10th, accepting the responsibility offered. On August 13th, Nehru wrote Jinnah from Wardha to seek your cooperation in the formation of a coalition provisional government. Jinnah's response was acute surprise. I know nothing as to what has transpired between the Viceroy and you, nor have I any idea what agreement has been arrived at between you two. If this means the Viceroy has commissioned you to form an executive council and has already agreed to accept and act upon your advice, it is not possible for me to accept such a position. However, if you care to meet me on behalf of the Congress to settle the Hindu-Muslim question and resolve the serious deadlock, I shall be glad to see you today at 6 p.m. That was August 15, 1946, precisely 1 year before the birth of India and Pakistan. Nehru responded the same afternoon from Bombay, I am prepared to come to your place at 6 p.m. After their meeting, Nehru reported to Wavell that he had offered Jinnah assurances that no major communal issue would be acted upon in the Constituent Assembly except by a majority of both parties, that any disputed points would be referred to the federal court for the decision, and that while Congress did not like the idea of grouping and preferred autonomous provinces under the center, they would not oppose grouping by provinces if the provinces wished it. Nehru offered Jinnah 5 Muslim League seats on the cabinet of 14, but did not see how the League could possibly object to a nationalist Muslim being included among the Congress party quota, which would be 5. Jinnah not only objected but thereupon refused to participate in the interim government, and his only proposal, as Nehru reported it, was to defer all action for 6 months. Jawaharlal refused to wait any longer, however, leaving Jinnah's Malabar Hill state as the sun went down on the eve of India's bloodiest year of civil war. There was a curious stillness in the air over Calcutta. Major L.A. Livermore reported from his perch atop Fort William that hot, sticky monsoon morning of Friday, August 16, 1946, as dawn broke over Kipling's City of Dreadful Night. Muslim workers from the Howrah jute mills had begun pouring into the city, headed towards Ochterlony's Needle Monument for the mammoth meeting to celebrate Direct Action Day. Chief Minister Sohrawardy and other leaders of Bengal's Muslim League were scheduled to address that meeting. Reports that Hindus had erected barricades at the Tala and Balencia bridges to prevent Muslims from entering the city reached British headquarters at the fortress by 7:30 a.m. But the brigadier in command of Calcutta, J.P.C. McKinley, had ordered all of his troops to be confined to barracks that day. India's largest, most crowded, most communally volatile city was left virtually naked. Suharwardi had given the government servants an extraordinary 3-day weekend off. Communal trouble started as early as 7 a.m. in Maniktola area in northeastern Calcutta and has continued to spread throughout the day. Governor Burroughs wired Wavell that night. Situation up to 6 p.m. in that there have been numerous and widespread communal clashes, accompanied by some looting of shops and arson. Weapons employed appear to have been chiefly brickbats, but in a number of cases, shotguns have been used by the members of both communities, and some cases of stabbing have been reported. A marked feeling of panic, especially among Hindu traders in North Calcutta, has been feature of situations since early in the day and has given rise to many wild reports far exceeding actualities. Disturbances so far have been markedly communal and not in any way anti-British. Lieutenant General Sir Francis Tucker, in charge of India's Eastern Command, received intelligence reports that Suharwardi told an immense Muslim crowd gathered round Ochterlony's monument that afternoon that the cabinet mission was a bluff and that he would see how the British could make Mr. Nehru rule Bengal. Direct Action Day would prove to be the first step towards the Muslim struggle for emancipation. He advised them to return home early and said that he had made arrangements with the police and military not to interfere with them. Our intelligence patrols noticed that the crowd included a large number of Muslim gundas, hoodlums, and that their ranks swelled as soon as the meeting ended. They made for the shopping centers of the town, where they at once set to work to loot and burn Hindu shops and houses. At 4:15 p.m., Fortress Headquarters sent out the code word red to indicate that there were incidents all over Calcutta. Curfew was proclaimed in the riot-affected districts at 6 p.m. But by 8 p.m., when the area commander called in the 7th Worcesters and the Green Howards from their barracks in the north, they found the College Street market ablaze and the few unburnt houses and shops completely sacked. In Amherst Street, the litter of mass looting in Upper Circular Road, the rubble left by firebugs on Harrison Road, the cries of wounded and terrorized residents, and many bodies of newly dead. Calcutta was the battlefield. Major Livermore recalled, the battle was mob rule versus civilization and decency. The casualties of that stricken field were, for most part, the poor, the low caste illiterates and those too weak to defend their property from the looter, the vulture of the mob. February's killings had shocked us all, but this was different, General Tucker noted. It was unbridled savagery with homicidal maniacs let loose to kill and to maim and burn. The underworld of Calcutta was taking charge of the city. The police were not controlling it. Daylight showed not a sign of a bus or a taxi. Rickshaws were battered and burnt. There were no means for clerks to get to their work. All the more idle men loafing about the town, rioters carrying loaded sticks and sharpened iron bars. It was obvious that their mood was thoroughly dangerous. A man beaten to death less than 100 yards from police, slow to get out of their vehicles, and before they had come into action, 3 people were beaten down and lay dead on the road. The stench in this area had become appalling, and one citizen was so grateful for the removal of at least part of the cause that he pressed 2 bottles of champagne on the platoon responsible. At about 9 p.m. that night, we received orders that the main streets at least must be clear of bodies by the time the curfew lifted at 4 a.m. next morning. Stench masks and gas capes would be sent to aid us in lifting the decomposing corpses. The location of Muslim burial grounds and Hindu burning ghats would reach us as soon as possible. How the hell do I tell a Muslim from a Hindu when they've all been dead 3 days? It took 2 more days and nights to finish my own area, a total of 507 corpses in the one company sector, most of which came from our locality less than 400 yards square. Already there was a threat of a cholera epidemic. By the night of August 19, rotting corpses posed so serious a threat to Calcutta that Bengal's government offered to pay troops 5 rupees for each body collected. One of those who pitched in was Major Dobney of the Calcutta Fortress Staff. Except for the occasional band of British troops, the city was literally a city of the dead. All the streets were well lit, showing the rotting piles of humanity and rubbish. Handcarts were piled high with bodies and had been left abandoned at the curbside. Once it was known that the mad Englishmen were collecting the dead, more bodies appeared from the labyrinth of houses and hovels. All night the horrible task went on. No one knows exactly how many people were slaughtered during the Great Calcutta killing, but General Tucker estimated the toll ran into thousands. Unofficial sources claimed that as many as 16,000 Bengalis were murdered between August 16th to 20th, 1946, and many times that number fled over the bridge across the Hooghly, which for days remained one-way current of men, women and children and domestic animals headed towards the Howrah railroad station. Margaret Burke White reported. Finding the trains could not carry them all, the people settled down to wait on the concrete floor, dividing themselves automatically into Hindu and Muslim camps. It was only the beginning of partition. On August 21st, Wavell informed Pethick Lawrence that the present estimate of casualties was 3,000 dead and 17,000 injured. Congress was convinced that all the trouble was deliberately engineered by the Muslim League ministry, but the Viceroy had as yet seen no satisfactory evidence to that effect. The latest estimate of casualties was that appreciably more Muslims than Hindus were killed. Jinnah was asked about the Great Calcutta killing by a foreign news agency later in August and replied, "If Congress regimes are going to suppress and persecute the Muslims, it will be very difficult to control disturbances. In my opinion, there is no alternative except the outright establishment of Pakistan. We guarantee to look after non-Muslim and Hindu caste minorities in Pakistan, which will be about 25 millions, and protect and safeguard their interests in every way. That is the quickest way to India's real freedom and to the welfare and happiness of all the peoples inhabiting this subcontinent." On August 24th, Wavell announced that Nehru and 13 colleagues of his choice would form a new interim government starting early in September. The recent terrible occurrences in Calcutta have been a sobering reminder that a much greater measure of tolerance is essential if India is to survive the transition to freedom, stated the Viceroy. A week later, Sir Shafat Ahmad Khan, one of the 3 non-League Muslims named to Nehru's cabinet, was stabbed 7 times by 2 young Muslim League fanatics in Simla. 2 days after Wavell's broadcast, Jinnah announced that the Viceroy has struck a severe blow to the Muslim League and Muslim India. But I am sure that the Muslims of India will bear this with fortitude and courage and learn lessons from our failure to secure our just and honorable position in the interim government. I still maintain that the step he has taken is most unwise and unstatesmanlike and is fraught with dangerous and serious consequences, and he has only added insult to injury by nominating 3 Muslims who, he knows, do not command either the respect or confidence of Muslim India. Wavell now appealed to Nehru and Gandhi to accept a new formula on grouping, threatening not to convene the Constituent Assembly until they did so. Several times last evening, Gandhi wrote to the Viceroy on August 28th. "You repeated that you were a plain man and a soldier, and that you did not know the law. We are all plain men. It is our purpose, I take it, to devise methods to prevent the repetition of the recent terrible happenings in Calcutta. The question before us is how best to do it. Your language last evening was minatory. As representative of the king, you cannot afford to be a military man only, nor to ignore the law. Nor can the Congress be expected to bend itself and adopt what it considers a wrong course because of the brutal exhibition recently witnessed in Bengal. I say this neither as a Hindu nor as a Muslim. I write only as an Indian. You will please convey the whole of this letter to the British cabinet. The strong reaction by Gandhi to my suggestion that Congress should make their assurance about the grouping categorical shows how well justified Jinnah was to doubt their previous assurances on the subject. Wavell wrote Pethick Lawrence as his cover letter enclosing Gandhi's missive, adding, "It is to my mind convincing evidence that Congress always meant to use their position in the interim government to break up the Muslim League and in the Constituent Assembly to destroy the grouping scheme, which was the one effective safeguard for the Muslims." The Secretary of State and the Prime Minister disagreed. We fully appreciate gravity of the danger of serious and widespread communal trouble, Pethick Lawrence wired in response. At the present time, we must ask you not to take any steps which are likely to result in a breach with the Congress. Wavell was now tempted to resign and deeply regretted having abandoned Jinnah in June, sensing that to work in harness with Nehru would prove more galling and less congenial. As long as Jinnah feels he can get in his veto through the Viceroy, he will not drop his intransigence. G.D. Bilda wrote Cripps the next day. There were signs of a feeling among the followers of the League that Jinnah was leading them to the wilderness, Birla noted, and in his message from Bombay on August 29th, Jinnah appealed to his followers to rally round the Muslim League. Let us stand as one united nation under our flag and on one platform and be determined and prepared to face the worst as a completely united and great people with our motto, unity, faith and discipline. God is with us and we are bound to succeed. A few days later, on September 1st, the eve of Congress taking over the interim government, communal rioting rocked Bombay as Muslim houses all along Sandhurst Road flew black flags of mourning. Curfew was imposed, troops were called out, but in that one orgiastic night of violence, 35 people were killed and 175 injured. Sporadic rioting in Bombay would continue for over a week, and by September 10th, more than 200 Hindus and Muslims were dead as a result of communal violence. There was violence in Karachi as well, but League Premier Sheikh Ghulam Hussain broadcast an appeal for calm and tolerance, which helped subdue Muslim passions in that city. The horrors of Calcutta have begotten an attitude of sullen resentment on the one side and imbecile panic on the other, since British Chief Secretary reported, noting that both communities were busy surreptitiously arming themselves.